Today I'm on the Toronto Island, which is an island just off of the mainland of the city of Toronto. And today I'm going to be giving you the history of the people who live on this island and how it came to be that people were living on this island. And just behind me here is one of the homes on the island. And the history of the Toronto Island, the people who reside here, is quite an epic one, and they fought tooth and nail with the government to be able to have homes here. So there's a little bit of the history of Ward's Island community and Tent City. David Ward was head of one of the first fishing families to settle on the eastern end of Toronto Island in the mid-1800s. Beginning in the late 1800s, the city leased tent sites to the public for $15 to $20 per season. They were extremely popular as an affordable escape from Toronto's hot summers. This area became known as Tent City. In 1931, the city gave residents permission to build permanent year-round homes. The houses you see today sit on the approximate location of the original Tent City. At one time, the mainland and the island were connected, but back in the early 1800s, a severe storm separated the peninsula from the mainland, which resulted in the Toronto Island. And the Toronto Islands were initially a place of healing and restoration for the First Nations people. But then as the Europeans came in and colonized the island, the First Nations people were removed from the island. And right now I'm on Bayview Avenue, which they do name the streets on the Toronto Island, and right in front of me there is one of the newer homes. In the 1920s, people started to live on the island in the summertime, and at one time they had close to 10,000 people residing on the Toronto Island during the summer. And about 100 people resided all year round. So that was in the 1920s. But as 1955 rolled around, the city decided they wanted to turn this island into parkland that everybody could enjoy. Look at that. So in 1955, the city declared Toronto Island public parkland and started demolishing the homes that were here. And they demolished 385 homes. But in 1980, there were still about 260 people living in homes on the Toronto Island. And they refused to leave. It was an epic battle. And in 1980, the sheriff came to the Toronto Island to formally evict those who were still living on the island in their homes. It was an epic battle, and the city and the sheriff decided to abandon it. And a very unusual deal was arranged with those who reside on the island. And what happened was the province decided that they could stay, but that they would only own the houses they lived in. So currently there are 262 homes on the Toronto Island. And the people who reside here own the houses they live in, but they do not own the land. The land is parkland, and in 1994, the province enacted legislation, and it's called Toronto Island Residential Community Stewardship Act. 1994, man, that was a mouthful. Look at this house. And that provincial legislation is such that if and when people who own these homes pass away, they can only gift these properties not the land, the house, to their spouse, their children, or a legal co-owner. If none of those people exist, then the house is held in trust by the Toronto Island Residential Committee, and that is a volunteer board that holds these homes in trust. And what they do is that when someone does pass away, and it has only happened about 66 times since the legislation was enacted back in 1994, and the committee gets the house appraised and then contacts the first 150 people. It's called a purchasers list. And the purchasers list comes from a directory. And there's about 500 people in the directory. And they pay $45 annually to be on the list. But when a house becomes available because there's no immediate next of kin, one of the lucky 150 people on the purchasers list get a call and told that there is a house for sale, and the appraisal is just for the house. So that's why a lot of people in the city are pretty tickled about the arrangement that exists between the government and the people who reside on the island, because when one of these houses does go up for sale, and because it's only the house for sale, the houses here run between $80,000 to $100,000 on average. Can you imagine? The houses in the city of Toronto run you about $1 million, and these houses are about $80,000 to $100,000. And when people do get the call, if they want to purchase the house and they're at the top of the list, they do get to purchase the home. And if not, if they don't want it, they're kicked off the list and they go down the list. Some people have tried to get past the loophole in the system for these homes on the island. And there is a well-known case, and I had the pleasure of talking to one of the residents on the island. And she was aware of the two people I mentioned. And this community here, news travels fast among a lot of the people who reside on the island. And it is the story of McLaughlin and Whitfield. And these were two gentlemen who were very close. McLaughlin actually owned a home on the island. And he lived here for most of his life. There's one of the newer homes again. The province owns the land. So McLaughlin owned one of these homes, and in 1994, when the legislation changed, you could only gift the home to your spouse, your children. Look at that one. Look how old that one is. Your spouse, your children, or a legal co-owner. But when McLaughlin was sick and passed away, he had no immediate next of kin. So they thought. So the Toronto Island Trustee Committee, which is made up of mostly long-time people who've lived on the island, took the house into trust. But there was a loophole because Whitfield, one of his closest friends, told them he was actually adopted by who? McLaughlin. And that made him legally his son. And he was adopted at the age of 60. So Whitfield was adopted at the age of 60, and McLaughlin passed away when he was in his early 90s, and that went all the way to court, and eventually the judge determined that in fact Whitfield, the adopted son, had a right to the home because the Toronto Island rules did not state that in order to be a child, you had to be a biological child. So there's a case of people trying to get through the loophole of getting one of these coveted island homes. Look at this one. And as far as I know, Whitfield still lives on the island. Look at this, guys. And these homes are coveted, and since the legislation was enacted, only 66 or a little over 66 times have these homes been purchased by somebody who's on the purchasers list. And the wait list to get into one of these homes is long. And as I said, $45 annually to be on the list. And you literally have to wait till someone passes away with no immediate next of kin to get one of these coveted homes. So let's take a walk around. I'm on the west side of the island where a lot of the older homes are. And they are beautiful. Some of them have been redeveloped. Like that one over there. They have their own little mailbox, and I had the pleasure of talking to one of the residents of the island. She was telling me how she has resided here most of her life. She was gifted the house from her grandmother, whom she thought of as a mother. So I guess that's the reason she was able to get the home. Very pleasant lady. And she was telling me that if she needs help or in an emergency, she calls 911, and the 911 or the police in the boats come and help them out here. But there are no stores on the island. There are no grocery stores. And at one time there was there were some shops on the island. They had bake shops and convenience stores. There is no traffic on the island because cars are prohibited. And there's only one way to get off the island, and that's by ferry or water taxi. Look at this one, guys. This one's really old. Look at this one. There's a hidden one here. Shall I? They don't even have a path to the house. So a lot of people who reside on the island have been related to the homeowner. So a lot of the people who still reside on the island, and there's about 700 people who live here, have been gifted just the home from their spouse or parents. But initially, a lot of the people who lived on the island, I love these little things here. There's like, it almost looks like a gallery every time I see it. Like, this here is a picture. It's called Iced Over. That's so cool. Initially, the people who lived on the island were artists and intellectuals like professors and teachers. This is odd. For rent. That's odd. There's no phone number there. I guess you gotta knock on the door. So artists and intellectuals lived here. I don't really know what the community is made up now, but from what I observed prior to recording, looks like a lot of more older people. What's this? Milton Acorn. Canadian poets were married in 1962 and attracted by the Toronto Island's natural beauty. Moved to a cottage north of here at 10 2nd Street. McEwen and Acorn were regulars at the Bohemian Embassy, a popular Toronto coffee house that featured poetry recitals and folk music. Heritage Toronto. Huh. So in 1955, they demolished a lot of these homes. Like 385 homes were demolished. And there are some remnants of those demolished homes, and I'll try and find that area where there is still some brickwork where the homes used to be. And I think it's more over towards the boardwalk. Look at this one. Let's take a walk down First Street. I find it so curious that they have street signs here too. Look at this. This street is called First Street. Let's make a left on First Street and see what's down this street. Looks like they raised this home off of the ground due to the possibility of flooding. There's no houses on this side. Get a load of this fence. Very bohemian. Look at this. And this is like just a 10-minute ferry ride from the city. Can you imagine, guys? It's like cottage living, a stone's throw from the city. There's another one of those gallery displays that I keep seeing. What in God's name is that? Look at the mailbox. Look at this, guys. I got the light in my eye there. Looks like he's restoring a boat. Look at this home here. This is one of the older homes too. They got themselves a little tree house here. It's very windy. It's a beautiful day, the second day of September 2024, but it's windy today. Look at that, guys. So I am on the southernmost part of the island where the boardwalk is. And I found some old brickwork here, and back in 1955 when they started demolishing most of the homes that were on the island at the time. This is what remains of those demolished homes, this brickwork here. And as you can see, there's an opening here. That would have been the pathway to a home that used to be on the island, but it is no more. It's all bush now. Let's just walk along here. Look at this old stonework here that they left. Here's another pathway. And there used to be an old home here as well. And I was told by one of the residents on the island who I was asking questions, she told me that a lot of tourists or visitors think that these homes are fake, which is so odd that they would think it's fake. Like part of the amusement park that is on Center Island. And there you have it, guys. A little bit of the history of the residents and homes on the Toronto Island. And thanks for watching, everybody.